Have you ever played Garry's Mod and felt like you shouldn't be there? Not because anything scary is happening, but because nothing is. No music, no players, just an empty map that's waiting for you to do something. It's a strange feeling. Garry's Mod isn't a horror game, but even though you know you're completely alone, it still feels like something or someone is watching you. Now, imagine a game built entirely around this feeling, a game based on Garry's Mod, but instead of a silly sandbox, it takes that emptiness and turns it into something deeply unnerving, a place where the lack of players is meant to be comforting, but no matter where you go, you're never really alone. Welcome to Where's Garry, a Garry's Mod horror game that asks a simple question. What if this game that has made the childhoods of millions and provided hours of entertainment for others was suddenly scary? Now, I know what you're thinking.
If I wanted a scary GMod, I'd just download a bunch of horror mods and load into a map. Oh. Why would I ever play this?
And sure, you could do that, but that's not what this is. This game isn't about slapping a next bot into GM construct and calling it a day. This is about turning Garry's Mod itself into the horror. The story is extremely simple. Our character loves Garry's Mod and one day decides to try and unlock every single achievement. Because if you didn't know, GMod has a bunch of achievements on Steam. But even though you're apparently down to just one, it's also the rarest to obtain. Yes, I am the real Garry. An achievement you only get by being in a multiplayer server with the game's creator, Garry Newman, which is pretty rare nowadays since he doesn't even play the game anymore. But somehow, he's online and inside the server right now. So naturally, we join. We log into a strange server running the iconic GM Flatgrass, or at least a warped version of it. It's just a flat stretch of grass with a few bushes and the iconic building, except it looks a little bit different and smaller. The map is also enclosed by these stone walls, and I honestly prefer this over the invisible barriers we normally have, but that's besides the point. You might have noticed that we have the tool gun in hand, which for any GMod player should already feel wrong, as you normally spawn with the physics gun instead, but in this game, it's entirely missing. Same with the spawn menu, no clip, and a bunch of other features. You can only walk, run, jump, and shoot. Not long after loading in, another player appears, Ketchup Fan 2. He explains to us what's going on through the in-game chat that only he can type in for some reason.
This is the first time I've met another player. I've been trying to reach the creator for a while, but every time I join a server he's in, it ends up messed up like this one. Empty maps, no weapons, spawn menu. Once we're in, we can't get out, unless we fix what Garry broke.
At first, this might sound a little vague, but Ketchup then shows us an error, a classic red error model you've probably encountered yourself in normal Gmod. Once you patch it with the tool gun, we see how bad things really are. These errors are everywhere, either as models or missing textures on the ground and walls. You must patch every single one in order to leave. However, not all of them are in plain sight. Some models can be entirely invisible, only revealed for a short time by switching the tool gun from patch mode into scan mode, which, as the name suggests, scans your surroundings. Errors can also be these broken computers, which you must turn on by touching them. But beware, as once you do so, they'll trigger a loud noise, alerting anyone of your location. Normally this doesn't really matter if you're alone, but Ketchup warns us that sometimes people will join. They look, move, and even talk like real players, but they're not. Most of the time they just wander aimlessly, but if one of them sees you, your options are simple: run or hide. There's no fighting back. And just to make sure you don't get too comfortable while doing your objective, there's a timer at the top of the screen. When it hits 0, you die instantly. Once every error is patched, however, it stops and you'll be able to open these doors scattered around the map. They are called exits, usually completely locked if you walk up to them. But attempting to open one after completing your objective, it'll disappear, also notifying anyone nearby. In order to actually leave, you must open each one until the last finally lets you out. Flatgrass is the game's tutorial, and it already hates you. But what's interesting about it isn't the map itself, it's Ketchup Fan 2. Every mechanic I just explained was taught to me by him. He acts as a guide, explaining how the game works and telling you exactly what to do. But the way he teaches you is a bit strange. For example, when he introduces the fake players that hunch down, he doesn't just describe them. He brings you in front of the building, sprays a circle on the ground, tells you to stay in it, and starts a countdown so he can start chasing you himself. When he talks about how the exits work and when you actually leave the server, instead of following you, he stays behind. And it's not because he can't or something, he literally chooses to do that. He's hiding something. The thing is, even though there's something wrong with Ketchup, Flatgrass is the only place we ever see him in. He never appears anywhere else in the game after this, so I guess it doesn't really matter. All I can do is move on to the next server, or levels as I like to call them, and try to find where Garry is. Speaking of which, the map this time is a modified GM construct. The warehouse is still there, but it's smaller. The dark room is gone too and instead leads to a grassy field on the other side of the map, connected to a small indoor space and an eerie park. Until you patch the first error, you're free to explore the map in all its glory. You can find a bunch of scribbles and drawings plastered everywhere, and it's clear that someone's been here before, but we don't see anyone. Once the first error is patched, this feeling is broken by a new player joining, and if he sees you around, you meet the Minch Bag. He is a mutilated and distorted Dr. Kleiner with a gravity gun fused into his torso. He wanders the map aimlessly until he hears something. Something as small as walking into leaves, bushes or trash piles on the ground can trigger him, making him run towards the source of the sound. If he won't see anyone, he'll go back to wandering, but if he spots you, you better run and quickly find a place to hide. Staying out of his line of sight is the simplest way to deal with him, as once he has lost you, he'll just give up and leave. He's also much quicker than you, so if you continue running away from him and run out of stamina, you're pretty much dead. His AI is relatively simple, the simplest in the game actually, but what's interesting about him is what he represents. Minchbag used to be the default name for GMod players before the game moved to Steam, because yes, this game is pretty old. Over time it became synonymous with griefers, trolls and new players populating servers. He's sort of a ghost of the game's past if you really want to think it that way, but he's not annoying here, he's dangerous. Getting caught by him or any other enemy, as a matter of fact, means a jump scare, leading to an instant death. Thankfully you can track his location pretty easily by scanning with your tool gun if he's near you, but after you've patched every error, opened every exit and eventually leave, things only get worse. We are dropped into the foggy cityscape of GM Big City. It's literally just a big city, I don't know what else to say. This map's whole gimmick is sound, as it's not only filled with a ton of trash on the ground everywhere, but also these streetlights. If you cross them while they're red, alarms go off, but if it's green, it's completely safe. They will switch colors every few seconds, and the amount is actually randomized each time you enter. It might not sound like much when there's only one, but these lights are plastered everywhere. You're constantly forced to make small but stressful decisions. Do you wait for the light to turn green or take the long way around? Every shortcut comes with a risk, and every safe path costs you seconds you might not have. Patch the first error and two new players join, Meaty and Semper. All you have to know about Meaty is that he's fast, faster than any other enemy in the game, but he's also completely blind. He relies entirely on sound. Stand still and he'll walk right past you, but move at the wrong time and you're dead before you can react. Even though it's pretty disconnected from it, it's actually based on a popular Russian creepypasta by the same name, and same goes for Semper. Semper is completely invisible. You know he's near you by the static sound he emits and his shadow on the ground. If he gets close, he'll slowly creep up to you, but you can freeze him in place by looking at him. However, if you let him get too close, he'll manifest and start chasing towards you. Something which is pretty interesting about Semper is that he's the slowest enemy in the game. If you have any amount of stamina, he's literally just not a danger, but the moment he loses sight of you, he'll let out a large screech that will trigger Meaty. The real horror of Big City isn't just the enemies, it's how they perfectly work together. Mitty punishes movement, while Semper punishes hesitation. You're never reacting to just one threat. You're constantly making micro decisions under pressure. It turns the entire level into a slow, miserable balancing act, and it's easily one of the most stressful sections in the game. Eventually, however, we escape, yet move on to GM Slaughter. By a long shot, this is my favorite level. It's based on a series of maps called GM Ragdoll Slaughter, basically different places filled with torture devices to kill ragdolls with. Here, however, the game turns that concept into an obstacle course of sorts. There are these saws that move constantly back and forth, and also this cart with one of them attached to it. Be in their way and you'll instantly be killed. If you're not paying attention, you can very easily be cut and forced to restart, adding some environmental awareness to the gameplay. There's even this granny-style bell alarm that gets triggered when you step on it. We love some granny representation here, but what I find more interesting about this map are the indoor spaces. Like there's this creepy abandoned lab with industrial doors and torture rooms, this empty warehouse with chains hanging from the ceiling, and this mansion in the middle of all of it. On the outside it might look like an apartment building of sorts, but walk inside and it's revealed to be a dirty house full of rooms to explore. And then there's the level's main antagonist, the Headsman. He works exactly like the Mingeback, wandering, listening, chasing, except his vision range is enormous. So big in fact that by the time you see him running at you, he's probably been doing so for a while. Unlike the previous enemies, however, which have all been based on something, the Headsman is completely original to this game. He's a corrupted Dr. Breen equipped with a makeshift chainsaw, a fizz gun holding a spinning saw blade. And it's not there just for show, you can hear its engine echoing across the map as he moves around, and when he chases you, it starts roaring loudly. But if you manage to survive and escape, you're left with the last server of the game. We finally found Garry, but even though he's right in front of us, he doesn't chase us immediately. He instead talks using the in-game chat and explains how he works. Once Garry sees you, he'll stop time for exactly 5 seconds, to which you're completely defenseless until that time expires. If you get too far away from him or trigger a noise, he'll teleport somewhere close to you. And to top it off, he always knows where you are, so hiding or running away is completely pointless. You might say that he's way too overpowered, and that's completely fair to assume. However, remember when I said Semper was the slowest enemy in the game? Well, I was lying, because Garry takes the #1 spot. He's so slow that it's almost laughable, and you can outrun him just by walking. But don't let that fool you, as you're not meant to play this level the same way as the others. The map that this level takes place, GM Graveyard, is filled with tight paths, corridors, and twists and turns, specifically designed with Garry in mind. If you're being ignorant, you'll almost always die, but if you take time to learn the map and use the walls to your advantage, you can stay one step ahead of Garry at all times. And it honestly makes for a pretty fun level in my opinion. Garry can also randomly talk using the in-game chat. The stuff he says also dynamically changes depending on what's going on, like if you have one error remaining, if he stops time, if you've patched everything, and so on. He has a series of unique lines depending on all of these scenarios. And it honestly makes perfect sense, as Garry's not meant to be a mindless monster like the other enemies. Once all the errors are patched, he even tells you that he'll make things fair and not instantly teleports once you open an exit, as they make noises, as you know. What a nice guy. But when you open the final door, that's the end of the game, or so it seems. Whereas Garry actually has a couple of secrets to discover. It wouldn't be a modern horror game without them, after all. They're all unlocked during the game's intro sequence. Typing sound test on your keyboard takes you to a hidden sound test menu, where you can play every audio file in the game, like voice lines, music, and so on. The final secret, however, is triggered by
Editing Billy here. Before I move on to the final secret of the game, there's actually one more thing I forgot to include in the script, that being debug mode. Entering a level once you've typed debug in the intro gives you access to a bunch of commands, stuff like making you invisible to other enemies, giving you infinite stamina, and allowing you to disable the HUD are just a few of them. There's even one that turns the game from 4:3 to 16:9, although it doesn't look very good. Anyway, back to the video.
The final secret, however, is triggered by typing the developer's name. Normally, you have to unlock each level by beating the last, starting with GM Flatgrass and ending with GM Graveyard, but by typing Billy, you unlock them from the get-go, which is a bit odd since that's not the creator's name, it's mine. You know, come to think of it, this game is pretty strange. Like, has anyone never heard of this before watching this video? I don't even remember downloading it from the start. Because I didn't. I made it. The game I've been yapping about for like 20 minutes or something was made by me. Not as a personal project, not as an ad or a joke, but for this video alone. I bet you haven't even questioned anything at all so far. I mean, really, do you think someone just so happens to stumble on such a weird concept like a Garry's Mod horror game and talks about it for this long without having something to do with it? No, I orchestrated it. Me! Billy! And now that you've seen it, now that you know my secret, it's time to end the video. Have you ever played Garry's Mod and felt like you shouldn't be there? Not because anything scary is happening, but because nothing is. It's almost like something was somehow watching you. Well, it's probably because you were playing Where's Garry, my interpretation of what the Garry's Mod horror game could look like. If you're wondering, yes, this game was only made for this video, but if you wish it to play for yourself, it's entirely free for Windows. I did actually try to make an enjoyable game this time unlike last year, but I won't promise you it'll be peak gaming, but it's at least something, right? Anyway, I've been Billy, thanks for watching.